So I'm joined by Jean-Pascal and Stella of Rootaware. Thank you very much for chatting with me today. Is it right if you quickly introduce yourselves and just say a little bit about your respective paths into creating Rootaware?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned before, thanks a lot. I'm Jean-Pascal, JP for short. My co-founder is Arlen Deep. He's currently not here. And our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, is Stella. So who we are, we're two current and serving police detectives in the Metropolitan Police, so London, big city. And Al followed in his dad's footsteps to be a police officer. And I slightly different footsteps as a Royal Marine, but all of us have a shared vision to keep people safe. We're wanting to make a difference, which we do every single day in our lives, and we utilize our policing knowledge and experience to create a truly unique and powerful product in allowing people to travel safe and travel smart.
Ooh, brilliant. In which case, it'd be great just to hear a little bit about how the product works, how it, an ordinary user would interact with it, and what the progress is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I'll go first, and if you wouldn't mind, Stels. So Rootaware, it's a system that predicts crime and provides crime prevention advice, whether that be through a mobile app or another data source. How we do this is we use Melinda, our proprietary machine learning technology, who processes through contextual data. So if you imagine a digital detective or myself and Al on your shoulder, telling you where to go, how to go, and how to go about it in the safest possible way, that is essentially how the technology works. It takes on various data sets, from street lighting data to local authority data to the amount of population density there are in a specific area, as well as crime statistics, processes that through and does two things. It produces, from a Melinda perspective, an output or prediction, and from a Rootaware perspective, a safe route. Do you want to go, Stars?
Okay. So I'll just start from the beginning. I'm Stella, and I used to work for the Metropolitan Police before, and most of my is in community work. I now work and live in Singapore, so I do a lot of community-based projects over here. And I was taken on with JP to do some community-focused work and how we can engage people from different backgrounds, diversity, and how we can really sort of market the product to reach out to a lot of people. In terms of what the Rootaware app does, I would explain it in some very simplified terms, is that it's a community-driven GPS safety app. So the idea is that it gets you from A to B in the safest way possible. And it's live stream updates, so the data comes from people and from the community who are updating what is going on, where they are at that moment in time, as well as using historical data. So the idea is that it predicts crime and sort of identify certain hotspots, and then it will give you crime prevention tips as well. So even if you're not particularly going somewhere, but you're wanting to visit an area that you've not been to before, you can have a look and say, oh, would be a great way to go, or this is an area that's safest for me to do. And it will come up with sort of and tips on areas and prevention tips there, what you can do and how the crime, and be more aware of your surroundings. So the idea is try and get people to be more responsive and aware of where they are, where they're going. And yes, used in lots of different ways, to be honest with you, not just from A to B. I think even when you're not traveling as such, you can still use the app to have advice where you are.
Awesome, thank you very much. You both kind of in different ways touched upon how it's useful for people. Could you maybe say a little bit about who it directly benefits, and say a case study example, what difference to do?
Yeah, sure. Shall I go, Stars?
Yeah.
Yep. So we have a couple of different user groups. So to focus on Rootaware specifically, firstly, we have trialed with 107 users from different backgrounds. So we're talking about different genders, different ages, different professions, a consumer base. So as Stella mentioned, people that are kind of traveling from one place to another, parents seeing where the children are going or giving them crime prevention advice, students obviously going into a new town, a new place, again, not knowing where they're going to. So that's the consumer base. The other flip side of what Rootaware or Melinda does is it provides outputs or actual data sets to larger corporations, i.e. a telematics or insurance industry. We have been working in close partnership with 3 of these companies, Track Global being one of them, which is one of the largest telematics companies in the UK, and they use that API or SDK datasets as part of their package deal to essentially take on as much data as possible and also then do some predictions from their business perspective. The other side to that is we have the law enforcement agencies. So we are just finalising a deal with both Bedfordshire Police and Leicestershire Police in order to allow them to better resource their policing. By that, I mean they, again, take on a large amount of data. Sometimes people don't know how to use that data, and because they don't have data analysts anymore, they don't know how to interpret that data in terms of how to better resource their emergency response vehicles, as well as thinking about how to investigate certain crimes. So they use our data in order to do those 2 things: investigate crimes in a better format, quicker format, more understandable format, and they also use that data to show places. So police vehicles, this is where you should be focusing on. The third part of this is Admiral car insurance. So we're just in very early stage talks with Admiral to essentially create a user engagement platform. By that, I mean that Admiral needs user engagement. We have a couple of things. So not only do we have access to data that's already contextualized and gives you some predictive outputs, but they also want a customer face at the end of it. So B2B2C. They have struggles with keeping engagement with their customers. They only have 2 points of engagement. From the initial point where you give them, or they give them premium, to the end point where they say, this is a renewal. The kind of 12 months in between, or 11 and a half months in between, there's absolutely nothing. So they want to engage on our platform as a route-aware, and also back that up with the data that we have from the outputs of Melinda.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And mentioned Melinda a few times in this, and as I understand, Melinda's kind of brain underpinning the functionalities of route-aware. Before we just kind of dig into what Melinda is in scientific terms.
Sure. Stels, do you want to give it a shot?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. Melinda, so
You do the technical stuff.
So Melinda, in the most basic sense, she is the brains of the operation. But what she actually is a set of algorithms, and it's the transference of our consciousness, as in myself, ours, and other investigators' consciousness into the way that we look at crime. So because the way she's programmed in a very unbiased way. So we don't just look at crime statistics, because as we all know, there is a heavy influence or a heavy bias for machine learning to look at just crime and criminals. And unfortunately, some of those criminals are from a certain background. Melinda doesn't do that. She takes a holistic approach, as in how I would take it as an investigator, as a detective, and how I would take it from very different sources. So if you imagine Melinda's a little puzzle piece, and data comes in through a linear format straight into her. Street lights, crime data, prison releases, population density. It could be simply shops opening and closing. She processes that through and then gives you an output. Whether or not you want to find out, is there going to be crime in this area based on those statistics, those algorithms in the next week, month, year, she will give you that. She will also tell you, okay, based on this pattern, this is the type of crime and criminals you will have. And also, as a byproduct of that, because she's programmed to understand, okay, if you have a theft, these are the crime prevention advice points that we can have. So she will say, okay, theft, shoplifting, or a bag being stolen off the table in a restaurant, this is the preventative approaches that you should take. So yeah, she's the focal point and the technology and the digital detective, we like to call her, for our whole infrastructure.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we've already touched quite a bit on the ethical responsibility that we need to take into account with respect to policing algorithms. And obviously, predictive policing does raise a lot of valid questions on, fighting bias, upholding justice, etc. Is there any more you want to develop just on like how you're acting responsibly, how you're avoiding certain pitfalls and problems that are associated in this space, set any kind of minds at ease.
Sure. Stels, do you want to take the first part?
Sorry, can you repeat it? I couldn't hear you properly. What is the first part of the question?
So no, just, how is Root-Aware avoiding any kind of ethical issues associated with algorithmic and predictive policing?
Okay, so when you're talking about AI and when you're doing the training, is the quality of data that you're inputting which will determine the sort of training and the quality of data that you're going to have outputs from there. So we have such a diverse team within Root-Aware as it stands. We all come from very different backgrounds and we all have very different experiences. So as JP was saying, he's from the detective background. He's still a serving police detective. I'm coming from policing too, but a very community-based focused environment. So in terms of like making sure, or not even making sure, but trying to limit the biasness that's involved with putting it, is having good quality data. And part of that process will be us checking and ensuring that the quality is there and it's just not random data that's being pulled that doesn't make sense. It's going to be data that has to be checked and it has to be put so that when the training is being done by Melinda, we can be confident that we can limit the biasness as much as possible. There's always going to be, AI develops as training goes on, there's always going to be data input in. So being on top of that, maintaining it, doing quality control checks throughout to limit the biasness as much as we can. In terms of, I know there's been a lot of stuff in the media regarding commission along those lines. Some important things discussing it, but that's not something that Melinda is planning to do. We're not doing face recognition services, so we're taking in our expertise, all our experiences, taking data, as JP was saying, from the community and crowdsourcing the information effectively. So it's going to be coming from the communities and from the public, from the local authorities, all the stuff that all the organizations we have access to, all this data in. So that in itself should limit the biases as much as possible because we live in a very diverse demographic. So it's not just coming from one area or one little town where everybody, has one opinion. It's, we're sourced from multiple places.
Further to that, Will, I just want to add just a couple of extra bits. So as Stella said, the diversity element of data and clean data at that is one of the focal points. But we also have a central core kind of MO or modus operandi, if you like, of protected characteristics. So there's a legislation, Police Protected Characteristics 2010, where it gives you about 9 specific areas. And those 9 specific areas, i.e. gender, i.e. sexuality, i.e. whether or not you're pregnant or not, so on and so forth, or disabled or not. We look at data sets directly linked to those specific areas as much as we can do from various sources. And that in itself diversifies or changes the data that we present. Whereas everyone else would focus just on crime and just the arrest figures or just the prison figures and prison populations, etc. We haven't got that. We've got that as an element, of course we do, but we then cross that with everything else, including the protected characteristics legislation, and to ensure that we can essentially cover as much ground as possible and diversify the data from the source.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a really great answer. Let's just take a step back and look to the long-term future of Root-Aware. What are the different ways and strategies this can work its way onto every person's phone or interact up there with ordinary people?
I guess if I answer it one part and then still answers another one, I'm going to give you the big vision. The big vision is I'm made redundant from both my position as the CEO of Root-Aware and also as a police officer. I'll be more than happy to leave that legacy behind because crime does touch people's lives directly or indirectly. And if I can essentially stop that, I know it's a big laudable vision, but if I can stop that, that's going to be the measure of success for me. How we do that, to take a step or 3 back from that, is to get the app there. We're going to start in a very small group, of course. Students essentially was our first port of call. because they kind of tick a few lists. They move around quite a bit within cities or within urban areas, or sometimes within large escapes or larger towns and villages that they've never seen or gone to. They also have parent groups, etc. So that's the app itself. How Melinda is then measured as success is how many types of telematics industries we can get into, how many insurance companies we can get into, and how many of the 52 police forces we can get into nationally as well. So that's our measure of success. I'll let Stella kind of put some more meat to that bone.
In terms of when we talk about potential growth, there's lots of different avenues that we have discussed that we would like to potentially move into. So in terms of license to crime, we can use license crime app and where it can be used by local authorities, can be used by government, TFL, organizations like that. We can also go into for educational purposes. So, we're looking at in terms of educating the younger generations and safety, crime prevention, all those lines. Even going into organizations and businesses, if they're looking to try and safeguard and improve the security systems and what they have. I know there's a lot of work in terms of digital security and things like that. So there's a lot of potential there for us to move and grow in that as well. Automobiles, as Jake was saying, and even with regards to health organizations, the app, there is potential, I think, to use it towards COVID and mapping out hotspots and, aiding contact tracing and things along those lines to help with something like this global pandemic. Who's to say there might not be something similar or equivalent in the future to come? So we can devise this technology and really, there's lots of potential there for it to grow and help in a multitude of ways, not just the sort of fundamental A to B safety route.
Awesome. It sounds like there's some really exciting times ahead for you, right? How can people get involved? How can, whether they're users, investors, or whatever, what kind of big asks and call to actions do you have? Anyone?
Yeah, so a couple of asks for me. Well, firstly, to stay safe, regardless. That's my target. As long as people stay safe, then again, I'm out of a job. But we'll concentrate on that. But secondly, what they can do is they can look at our website. Definitely download the app. It's still MVP stage, so prototype phase, and give us some feedback. Genuinely, just tell us this is what we like, this is what we don't like, this is where you can improve it. The other part of it, and we mentioned it before, is investment. We are still raising our first round at CIS, and we still are looking to raise 150, so we're about 95k that we need to raise. So any angels or any investors that are looking to go through SEIS and believe in a safer future, just get in contact with us. You can just go straight on the email or email me directly, which I'm sure you'll share our email addresses at the end. But just get involved in any specific way you want. Definitely contact us, download us, give us some feedback, and certainly reach into your pockets if you've got it, and reach out to me via email or phone.
Brilliant, thank you. Anything you want to add, Stella?
No, pretty much what JP was saying. It's just about raising the awareness. So in terms of social media, we're looking at launching some possible webinars or blogs. So keep a lookout for that. Follow us, and just as I said, just keep in touch with us. As soon as those get up and running, we'll be sending them out. So the more contact lists we have, the more we can keep informed, and the more we can sort of spread the awareness on what we're trying to achieve here. So yes, funding would be amazing. That's what we're all hoping for. So that would be great. And another great thing would be is testing. So it would be lots of people, as JP is saying, download the app or prototypes, and the more testing we have, the wider demographic we can hit, the more feedback we can have, the more we can improve the sort of UX and UI, the user interfaces for people, find out what works, what doesn't, what people would like to have on there. So it's really personalized, because at the end of the day, we're creating something that is to serve the public, something we want communities to use, something that's going to make their lives better and safer. So their feedback is important. And if anybody out there wants to endorse us and be like, "We're great," then yeah, that too.
Well, Stella, JP, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, and it's been fascinating to learn more about RootAware, and I'm excited to hear what's next.
Thanks, Will. Really appreciate the time.